I assume sound is okay.
Yeah,
I have
sounds
the
good.
mic.
Yeah. You just
Mhm.
gotta
And
you gotta zoom in a little bit more. Get it zoom.
Oh, he's being funny.
I was
Now,
trying to
just
be funny.
so long as our heads are all about the same size, I think we're good.
It was wah wah wah. I failed.
that would be that. Just that is the thing. If everyone's head's the same size, right?
Yeah, it's always
Yeah.
weird when you have that one guy that's like
I
this.
know.
Meet the Pressers with Matt Mallory and Klint Macro. Brought to you by Public Safety and Education and the Trigger Pressers Union.
This episode is brought to you by Saber Red, pepper spray and safety products for all Americans. Next Level Training, makers of CERT training products. Mantis, Mantis X helps shooters suck less. Firearms Owners Against Crime Institute for Legal, Legislative, and Educational Action. Meet the Pressers is also supported by other shows, companies, and our Patreon members. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Meet the Pressers. My name is Klint Macro, and this is my esteemed colleague, co-host, Matthew Mallory. Meet the Pressers is a safe place for trigger pressers to congregate and to fellowship and talk about training, gear, guns, gadget, political activism, current events. And tonight we have a very special guest. Matt, if you would do the honor of introducing him.
Hey, everybody. So we have John Kolis. He is the author of Pistol Practice. I had the esteemed pleasure of meeting him at the USCC Expo in Wisconsin. And we hit it off, talked a little bit, talked more on the phone recently. And I wanted to bring him on and definitely talk about everything he's got going on and how he can help people out there become better shooters and overall general great people, because he has that going for him. So John, welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you got into firearms, and then also on top of that, obviously how the book came to fruition, if you will. And here's just so everybody can see what it looks like.
Okay. How I got into firearms. Earliest memory, like most people my age, just the fondest memories of shooting a .22 rifle in the woods with my dad, right? And back then, beer cans had a nice thick steel seam, so when a .22 hit them, they reacted and it felt great. And my dad called me Hawkeye, and it's just a wonderful, father-son memory.
That's cool.
And I saved the rifle. So flash forward 50 years, maybe. My son's kind of coming of age, and I'm thinking I want to do that with him. I want to pass that on, as well as with my daughter, a couple of years younger. And living in Massachusetts, I thought, okay, got the rifle, but how do I do this? So I familiarized myself with the Massachusetts firearms laws, which was as confusing as you hear it is. And I got back into shooting. Initially with the intent of, okay, get legal and find a place to shoot with Jack. But then for myself, I wanted to develop proficiency with a handgun, because over the years, I'd gone shooting here and there on trips. I made a point of going to ranges, but I never had the time it took, right? Busy with job and family, didn't have the time it took to develop proficiency. And once I immersed myself in it about 15 years ago, I just started taking one class after another, trying out different sports, first Bullseye, then IDPA, took classes at SIG Academy. And I love shooting. It's gun yoga for me. I think it's one of the most relaxing things you can do. The concentration that it takes to make a good shot, you can't be thinking about other things. You've just got to be in the moment and breathe and feel it. And I just love it. So that's how I got back into it about 15 years ago. Got very active in area clubs. The book, Matt, I had the idea for the book 7 years ago, but I was still working full-time in technology. And so I was making notes. I was trying to write a little bit of it here and there, but it finally came to fruition just a few years ago.
Nice.
The impetus for it was going to the range frequently and watching other people at the range. And I saw a pattern. They come to the range, they load all their magazines to capacity, they take the free target that the club is offering, and they shoot till they run dry and they go home. And I don't really see a lot of improvement. Permanent members, the low left society. And I felt like, well, did you have an objective for this range session? Did you reflect on your performance, or did you just keep blasting away? Now, there's something to be said for just shooting to, I don't know, vent or relax, maybe, but this was more than that. So I had time to put together 20 chapters of skills, challenges, and exercises. And what I skipped over is that I became an instructor years ago and have been coaching friends and fellow club members for about 6 years. So I really incorporated a lot of my weekly lessons for people into the book.
Well, first, I want to congratulate you for having that rifle after 50 years. So many of us lost our first rifle, during moments of financial weakness in our 20s or something like that. So that's admirable that you still had that rifle.
Maybe I think one of the reasons I held on to it so tight was that I lost my dad young.
Yeah.
And so, I have his books, I have the rifle, a few other things. The story of the rifle is even better, though. My dad was from Brooklyn, New York. And why a guy from Brooklyn, New York had a .22 semi-automatic rifle is interesting, because he must have been like salesman of the month in 1957. And his company gave him a gun for being such a great employee.
It was a gun company?
No.
Right?
It was like an insurance company, salesman of the month.
That's awesome.
But I think that says something, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
1950s America, giving employees guns as a prize was commonplace.
Yeah.
Guns were sold in hardware stores.
Absolutely. And
we didn't have a gun violence problem.
No. Matter of fact, if there's a famous video of Jackie Kennedy taking everyone through the White House after she redecorated, and she proudly shows off the president's lifetime membership plaque for the NRA. So a Democrat, a Kennedy, was a lifetime member of the NRA. It was definitely a different time.
That's a video I haven't seen.
That's
interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah, the guns at the hardware store. I hear. I mean, heck, even when I was a kid, which wasn't long ago in the grand scheme of humanity, but you could get that stuff at a hardware store, at a local gas station. Especially long guns. My dad told me stories of them having trash cans full of like 30, 40 Krags, and you could have them for like $10, $15. It just barrels of them, and you just pick one out. Yeah. So
I was about 10 years old when we moved from New York to Connecticut. And I loved, in the fall, my dad and I would drive around looking for turkey shoots.
Yeah.
And there would be a fence rail lined up, and it was $1 a shot with a 410, and they would set up paper targets, right? And you just waited your turn until they had 10 kids on the line, and whoever got the most BBs, in the bullseye went home with a frozen butterball turkey.
Nice. So he had Hawkeye out there getting all the turkey, didn't he?
Yeah, I honestly never scored a turkey.
Oh,
and I kind of still suck at shotgun.
yeah.
Yeah, I had a friend that brought home a butterball for Thanksgiving, and when he brought it home, his dad was disgusted that he hadn't harvested one in the forest. So he took the butterball out into the yard and shot it with a 12 gauge, and then they cooked it. He said it ain't Thanksgiving if you're not spitting out pellets.
That's funny. That's funny.
That's a tasty treat.
Yeah. It was
so
a different time, right? Different time.
Sure. Yeah, when you guys are talking about that, it makes me think of like the pickup trucks that used to have the shotguns in the back of the rack, and then people had said to me that they remember going to school and bringing their shotgun to school, putting it in their locker. Well, Clint, you said that. I think you
Yeah.
told me you said that one time.
Yeah, I brought a rifle in for shop. I was doing some
Shop.
carving on the stock, and the principal's like, "What do you got there?" And I showed him. He says, "Keep it in your locker." You know,
Yeah, it's
And that was it.
such a
no big
different
deal. Yeah, no
such a
big
different
deal.
such a different time we live in, right?
Yeah, yeah, most certainly.
Well, good news
Absolutely.
is, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to ask, where were we doing rifle shooting in Massachusetts? Because there's not a whole ton of places around.
No,
Well, I guess maybe a couple of years ago there might have been, but now it's pretty lean.
we have. Well, actually, there's two clubs close to me with outdoor ranges. So Neshoba has a 100-yard range. Harvard, I think, has a 300-yard range. All the long rifle shooters are there. The Harvard Sportsman's Club in Harvard, Mass, not to be confused with the university.
Right.
Yeah, that's got everything. IDPA, IPSC, cowboy action shooting pits. I mean,
Nice.
I'm not a member there, but I've visited. But they're quite a facility. But we have a few. But you're right. Rifle shooting in Massachusetts is rare. But when we're introducing kids to 22, it's often done at a 50-foot indoor range.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to get them used to it and what it is. And
Old canvas mats from the CMP, or actually probably the what was the CMP before it was the CMP? The DCM. Yeah, the DCM. That's what the CMP was before they made it into the CMP. But yeah, you get those old ranges with the mats on the floor and get the kids in there getting the gloves and the slings.
Right.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. I used to coach our well, I was part of the coaching staff, I should say, at our sportsman's club. We were doing that. It's been a long time since I ran a line of kids on some mats in a 50-yard or 50-foot indoor range. But you were saying you were teaching for a while, and that working with a lot of new shooters, really you start to notice those patterns, and you seem to me that kind of analytical person that would recognize patterns. So that was a big part of what you put into your book, as far as your developing a training regimen, or setting goals for every practice session. Yeah.
yes. So the book works on different levels. I do think, as a coach or a firearms instructor, my specialty is taking people from total newbie to intermediate. When someone wants to really know about personal protection, home defense, I'm going to hand them off to somebody like Matt, or with deep law enforcement background that we have in our area. I have plenty of fun and plenty of clients who are just brand new to shooting, right? And so I get them comfortable first, and then there's a variety of skills to develop. And do I notice patterns? I mean, it's really tuning into the individual. How are they feeling? The first thing is to get them to a point of being comfortable with their firearm, and then when they're comfortable, tell them, okay, now you've just entered the danger zone where you think you're good. And you've really now got to follow all the rules all the time. Don't mistake that comfort for proficiency. But back to the practical things about shooting and getting the most out of your time at the range. I think everyone should have a goal. Load your magazines for the drill. Don't just load them to capacity. Take a moment to reflect on your shooting, and challenge yourself. Shoot with your left hand. Shoot one-handed, engage multiple targets, dry fire at home, shoot different shaped targets, shoot at different paces, introduce the element of time with a shot timer, because it creates pressure. It immediately creates pressure for people, right? And so the book, as Matt has seen, it has score sheets that get increasingly difficult from upper left to lower right. So a shooter that's brand new and a shooter that's been shooting a while could do the same exercise, but they'd be facing very different challenges due to the distance and the shooting position. if it's from low ready, if it's from holster, etc. And I think shooting should be fun. I think if every time an instructor brings a client to the range, it's high intensity, like a drill instructor, life and death, 2 to the body, 1 to the head, it can be overwhelming, especially when you look at the huge numbers of first-time gun owners we have in the last 4 years.
True.
So my thought is, I want you to practice. It's like when your piano teacher gives you lessons back when you're a kid, right? I mean, they tried to give you like a TV show tune, something maybe that you knew, something you would want to practice.
Yeah.
Right.
So
phonics. Whatever. It depends what decade you were in. You know,
Yeah.
for me, it was, okay, try to play Hawaii 5-0.
That's right. Yeah.
Charlie Cook can do it on the trumpet and shoot a gun at the same time. So we should have Charlie demonstrate the TV.
You should see what he can do with a dog and a fork too.
Anyway, on that note,
that's a joke. That's a joke.
It was a Klint joke, which is kind of the same as a dad joke.
Yeah, it's like a bad dad joke. Yeah,
that's fine. So some of the things in the book are games.
Yeah,
okay,
I see that.
Did you have a question about that?
No, I was going to say that I love the quotes. You've got a lot of quotes. You know, Clint Eastwood. You've got Navy SEALs quotes and
what's your Clint Eastwood quote?
I have a very strict gun control policy.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
If there's a gun around, I want to be in control of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my favorite one is a man's got to know his own limitations.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's truth. You know, a lot of the stuff I tell students all the time, if you do what Dirty Harry does in the movie, you'll probably go to prison. So I don't think that's a good role model as to how to handle yourself with a firearm, especially in public. But
make my day.
You got to know your own limitations. That's important. And you can only discover that if you practice and train in as much context as you possibly can for whatever it is that you're doing. Right. You know, if it's competition, then you need to train competition. If it's defense, you need to train defense. And you know, consider the unknowns perhaps. And if you're training bullseye, you need to give yourself 10 minutes to take the shot, you know, or whatever the case may be.
And I think a lot of people in the industry too, you know, they pee in other people's Cheerios in the sense of, you know, defensive shooting versus competition shooting. You know, competition shooting is great, competition shoot, but a lot of people think, well, I competition shoot really well, so that means I'm going to be a good defensive person. And I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think everyone has a little bit of plus and minuses for all those different industries. So people that competition shoot that go over to defensive might not be as good as they should be, or vice versa. Because I do a lot of defensive stuff. When I do competition, I'm a little rusty. So I think a little mixture, a little spatter of everything can be beneficial to all of us.
No doubt. Would you agree that the least common denominator though is strong fundamentals?
Totally.
Oh yeah, sure.
If you don't know how to drive the car, you're not going to be good at driving the car when you go to get in a car accident. You're driving the Indy 500. Yep.
We've all experienced this as instructors and in our community. Last 4 years have been very unsettling for our nation. And I start off my basic, my BFS classes with, hey, my goal for the day is for you to have an outstanding first firearms experience. And to do that, I need to know why you're here.
Nice.
Okay. I said, so let's just go around the room and everyone tell me why you're here. And the number, and I've heard some powerful statements. And I think some of these stories are the kind that the people who maybe don't typically listen to your show should hear, right? The people on the other side, right? I had one woman say, I was born in the United States, but I grew up in Venezuela, and I've seen this shit before. That just brought a chill across the room.
Yeah.
One woman said, I've been attacked one too many times. Right. So I've heard everything from my grandfather left me a bunch of guns. Like that was like the least stressful reason to hear someone wanted to get their license. Right? I'm inheriting all these guns. I want to be legal. But a lot of people who were seeking gun ownership for home defense, there's been break-ins in our neighborhood. I didn't used to worry when I'm leaving South Station at work. The guy worked at Amtrak. He said, now I am, right? So back to practicing, and the least common denominator being strong fundamentals, particularly for the people that are thinking as first-time gun owners that it's something like a fire extinguisher. Well, I've got a gun in the house. If there's a break-in, I've got a gun in the house. Okay, it's worthless unless you train. And I want them to have strong fundamentals. So I want them to go to the range often. And if they make it the activity that they do as a couple on Friday night, great. If you got two competitive siblings and they want to go, shoot to save the hostage chapter, great. Anything that gets the rounds down range and the hands on the gun to build the fundamentals. Eventually, they're going to do it enough that they're going to have the awareness of, okay, I feel pretty good, but yeah, I need to now take a personal defense class. They'll hopefully take that step on their own. I just want them, if they've bought a gun, practicing with it and not having a false sense of security that, oh, I've got a gun in the house.
I think
it's definitely not a magic talisman that just wards off evil because it's there.
For sure. I think too many people think that having it is enough. And I try to get that across to my students in the class too. In New York, they just passed last September, the 18 hours of training. And I start that class off. I love what you do there while you're here. And sometimes I'll ask, but I think I might start asking that more in the beginning, because it is varying, and that'll also build camaraderie between the students. But I'll start off with the class and say, 18 hours, anybody coming into this thinking, what the heck is he going to teach me in 18 hours? And then, a bunch of hands go up and I say, great, I'll ask you at the end of today. So 9 hours later, I ask them again. I said, did anybody here not learn anything? And like everybody, people that, military 30 years, et cetera, they're like, yeah, I learned something. Right. And then by the end of the 18 hours, I'll ask them, I say, now we've done 18 hours and you were wondering what I was going to teach you in 18 hours. Now let me ask you, do you know everything? And they all look at me and no. And I go, so you realize you got to practice. You got to leave here and you have to practice. I've educated you. I've lectured. I've trained you. I've made sure that educations went from your brain to your hands. Now you need to go out and practice like you did once you got your driver's license, driving to and from work, to and from your girlfriend, boyfriend's house, to and from school. That's where the true practice comes in. And, a lot of analogies with vehicles, but the one that I always do, people having a gun on them is great. But if you're not practicing with it, it's not going to be like a vehicle where if you're driving down the road and you see a deer, you don't go, oh dear, where's that brake again? You know where the brake is. You've practiced enough where you do it intuitively, like cruise control, and you just smack the brake because you've done that repetition over and over. You've got it in rote memory. The neural pathways have been, myelinization of the neural pathways has ensued. So
that's what it is. That is the exact technical term, myelinization of the, yeah, very cool. And then, so it's fascinating to hear how people process the information. And I also teach, USCCA classes, right? And we talk about the legal use of force and violent encounters and their aftermath. And with all due respect to you, Matt, because I realize, I'm a newbie teaching this stuff, and I've never had a violent encounter. So I'm literally teaching from the textbook, but I acknowledge that with, my students. I had a woman working with me. She was my all-time favorite clients. And we're lucky enough to have a live fire video simulator at my club.
Nice.
So it puts up a shoot house, but you're using your real gun. And it was a 45 round drill. So we got all the Massachusetts compliant mags loaded. So, she's engaging targets in the shoot house and doing mag changes. And at the end of it, she grabbed my hands and said, my hands are ice cold. And I thought, that's exactly what USCCA teaches us, right? Mm-hmm. They say, well, you can stick your hands in ice water to get a sense of what it's like. But I thought it was fascinating that just in this simulator, she had that experience.
Yeah, one of the things very empowering, especially with that curriculum, is that a lot of times people will recognize that they've experienced all that stuff in just their daily lives and in other stressful things that have happened in their life, car wrecks, what have you.
Yeah.
And the one thing I want to play devil's advocate with, there are times where having the gun is enough to defend someone. And so I think having the gun is the first step. And I'm definitely an advocate for training. obviously that's what my life is all about. The class that you take today, whether it's your first, fifth, sixth, or seventh, it's the step before your next class. Like, it should be an ongoing journey so that we can really get to know thyself, so that we know our own limitations, because our limitations are going to evolve as we train. My 10 today is going to be like a 2 in 2 years, or maybe the other way around. My 10 today is like, it's worse. The skills that we have deplete if we don't practice and keep that knife sharp. But with the defensive stuff, especially with that curriculum in particular, it's recognizing what the body does naturally, and human beings are really good at defending themselves. Like, it's born into our DNA. Now, running a gun under stress is a different story. That's definitely something that we need to be practiced and have that solid foundation of fundamentals, so that we don't have to rely on as much luck or divine intervention. But just the act of defending yourself, the body is real good at that. To be good at killing people, you have to be really, really skilled or a psychopath. But to defend yourself, like, God or Mother Nature has put a lot of stuff into us. And when people can recognize that, when they look at that curriculum, they say, oh yeah, I've experienced that before. And they realize that these are defensive positives that are built into them so that the species can survive. Mm-hmm. And then they understand, well, if I'm going to use this gun defensively, and that's my, that's the venue that I'm going to be looking to potentially use it if I'm left with no other choice, then I should then factor in these body's natural reactions into my training so that it is in more context. So going back to what we discussed before, like, so if you're a bullseye shooter, then you want to train in that venue so that you get good at being a good bullseye shooter. But if you also want to be a defensive shooter, I think it's important to factor in and incorporate those body's natural reactions into the training as much as you can do so safely on a square range.
So, John, with the book, I'm looking through here. There's a lot of different drills and challenges, and it's really, and I don't mean this in a negative, it's all over the place. It's really everything. It's not just marksmanship. It's looks like IDPA targets. You've got bullseye targets. You've got
custom targets.
What didn't you cover? I guess is what I'm getting at, because there's it's a lot of stuff in here.
Do you have a Joe Biden kneecap target in there?
Ooh,
wow.
The kneecap. If you've seen those horrible targets, anyway, go ahead, please.
I have seen that target. Yes, I don't have that one. I developed some targets on my own. A few drills on my own are just completely, made up by myself, and I enjoy that, like the progressive target. Mm-hmm. So first of all, Matt, thank you for saying that. The book's been very well received, right? So the total high for me in this is every book is a passion project, right? And any author who publishes something, whether it's their book of poetry or their great American novel, mm-hmm. they had an idea, and 30 years later they finished it, right? Mm-hmm. When your peers and people you respect receive it positively, okay, yeah, this is better than 30 years of corporate performance reviews. Mm-hmm. It just feels great. It has been very well received. A training counselor in Joy Allen, wonderful USCCA training counselor in Raleigh, she said she thought pistol practice was the perfect bridge from BFS to concealed carry.
That's nice. Yeah, that's actually
that's a great way to describe it.
Totally.
And tying in with what you said, Clint, about our body is naturally geared to defend us. I'd never described myself as a natural athlete. Okay, I didn't have great eye-hand coordination. My son has stupid eye-hand coordination. Okay, but I'm a pretty good shot, and I think it's because I've aligned my natural point of aim with strong fundamentals. So one of the drills seeks to help people identify just what's their natural point of aim, right? Somewhat unsighted fire, just if you raise, your cert or your firearm and just break the shot for center of mass, is it in line? Because if a laser shot out of their finger, people wouldn't miss, you know. No one ever says, you know, look a dog. They don't look in one direction and point in the other. So there are people that are going after their LTC in Massachusetts, and I'm thinking, well, there's pepper spray. That's something we should discuss, because I mean, they just can't hit the paper. And I don't know, I don't understand it. I don't understand how this finger can totally miss, you know, a 36-inch piece of paper, but it happens.
Yeah.
So now for those of us that can hit the paper, when you've got that nice high and tight grip on a semi-automatic, I feel like you're most of the way there, aren't you? Right? When your finger's that close to the same line as the barrel, you're almost there. So if you got a strong support hand and a smooth trigger press, it should all flow. And so a lot of the drills build off of that. Get your natural point of aim, learn about your sight alignment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then other fun things like malfunctions and reloads. I think training with snap caps just makes any training session fun, right? Just shuffle them into the magazines. You don't know when they're coming, but then just deal with it when it happens.
All amazing, great stuff for sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people overcomplicate things.
True.
It's point the gun at what you're looking at, and then just don't move the gun much when you press a trigger, and you'll hit it. But people worry, like, where's my focal plane? You know, do I have the gun at full extension? Do I hold it here? Where do I hold it? You know, that's where the nuance gets in, and the different levels of kung fu from different instructors sometimes confuses people, especially if it's somewhat conflicting from one instructor to the other. But, you know, however you're doing it, look at the thing you want to shoot at, because A, under stress, you're probably going to look at it. B, from an ethical and moral standpoint, we should have both eyes on everything that we're shooting at before we shoot it, right?
Perfectly.
So look at it, point the gun there. If you're referencing sights or not, or kind of, cool, and just don't move the gun much and you'll get the hit. But for whatever reason, that takes us a lifetime to get kind of good at.
And it's a bottomless, not pit, but that's not the right word. You can edit that part out. I've wanted to get good at handgun, and I'm comfortable with my level. I don't need to compete IPSC or compete IDPA. I'm comfortable where I am. You've reminded me, I need to take more classes, because I've been so busy with the book and marketing and teaching that, when's the last time I took a training class? Mm-hmm. Right? It's been about a year. I got to get back to SIG Academy or Bill Dalpy or somebody. And I go pheasant hunting a couple times a year with a friend of mine. And my goal this year is not to embarrass myself. So, you know, another opportunity for me is to get good with shotgun, right? I'm not an AR guy, but I love carbines. I'd like to improve my rifle technique with the carbine, you know? Mm-hmm. So it is such a varied sport. There's so much depth to it. Mm-hmm. And the passion project for me is history, right? So I'm always scoping for, you know, something from World War II. I have a beautiful M1 carbine I got from an estate. Love that. Got my eye on a few other things, you know, but I think that's another service that the Second Amendment provides, is to connect people with history.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, and yeah, I wish we could engage our high schools more.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's sad that it's not taught in schools anymore, not allowed to be taught in schools anymore.
No, we actually have a rifle team at our high school here.
They banned it here in New York. Yeah.
Now, granted, there's the only people exposed to that kind of training are the people on the rifle team. So it's not for everybody, which I think is a disservice to mankind personally. But it's definitely not the way it used to be. I think most of us probably remember in our schools as kids, like the hunter safety course was taught at school. It was something that you could go on a Saturday and do hunter safety course. And, you know, rifle teams, or I will say in the last couple of years, shotgun shooting sports at high schools have come a long way. Definitely very, very popular. So if anyone watching wants to get their kid like some free money for school, like college, put them in a shotgun program, because there's not a whole lot of people doing it. I mean, there's much more than there were a few years ago, but it's not like a football scholarship or something like that. They have a better chance of maybe getting some scholarship money.
When I think about the 2A fight, sometimes I was thinking the other day, I shared this with my wife, kind of tired of being on the defensive and answering the question, or nobody needs an AR-15, or why do you need a high capacity mag? Well, look, instead of reacting to that, perhaps the conservative states should organize shooting teams, interscholastic trap shooting teams, 22 bullseye teams, and let the antis answer the question, well, why not? It's an Olympic sport. Why shouldn't we have a high school shooting team? I'm not going to be able to do it in Massachusetts. You can't do it in New York, but perhaps some of the other states that are still free should just organize it. And not just so that we'd be satisfied, but I truly believe in the value it gives the kids, the responsibility, the recognition. Modern athletics has gotten so competitive. If you don't have the body type, or maybe you're the chubby kid, you're gonna feel on the outside at your high school if you can't do soccer or baseball or tennis or whatever. But maybe you could bring home the 22 prone bullseye trophy. And now he'd have peer recognition and not feel like the outsider and the loner. Yeah,
body shape, mobility doesn't matter. And I actually know a lot of kids that they give diagnoses this day and age like candy, but he legitimately had some type of like attention deficit disorder, something like that. But when he was in prone on the mat, he zeroed in, he focused, and that really helped him in his studies, in his other classes too, being able to just kind of shut everything off and focus on this thing right here and now. And he would actually, when he was doing his homework, he'd say front sight, front sight, front sight. So, just like he would be doing while he was on the mat too, so it definitely is a benefit and a value. The training thing, especially with youth, I've sat in offices with anti-gun politicians, and they're like, we need mandatory training. All right, what kind of training do we need? And I'll talk to them, and they'll try to get me on board. And I'm totally against mandatory training, even though that's what I do for a living. I said, do you want to get me on board with this? They're like, how? What do we need to do? I said, let's make the mandatory training happen at the grade school level, 4th grade.
Everybody.
Right. Everybody.
Yep.
Everybody. Right. And they're like, oh, no. So it's not about safety, it's about control. And that's unfortunately the case with most of those elected officials that are seeking those kind of bills. Yep. I know you guys are facing a really, really nasty one in Massachusetts right now.
HD 4420 in Massachusetts. The House version will not survive the Senate. Gold did a great job. They continue to fight it. I'm in touch with my state senator. I've written the letters like every responsible gun owner in Massachusetts should and can continue to do through the end of the year. They'll have to declare some type of victory, which means they'll do something. But we don't know what form that will look like. But the elements of the current bill are draconian. Serial numbers on all magazines, declaring any part of a firearm a gun. It's illegal to teach a child under 16 about a firearm.
Really?
Actually call that out. And worst of all, it would be illegal to carry concealed in any place that isn't posted guns allowed. And that would pertain to off-duty police officers as well.
Really?
Yeah. So the Massachusetts Association of Chiefs of Police have come out against this and said, you're going to make Massachusetts a dangerous place. This is terrible.
Sounds like New York.
So, yeah, the bill is rooted in ignorance and fear. Like they hear ghost gun And I think they really believe that criminals can download and print a gun.
Yeah.
They really.
I'm going to do one of the new shirts. I don't even think I've told you about this, Clint. It's going to be basically like a cowboy with a lasso, and through the lasso you're going to see the Democrat donkey with a unicorn horn, and it's going to say, "I found the gun show loophole."
That's funny.
No such thing.
That's funny. Yeah, that bill, like you were talking about the. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
I started coughing. I apologize, and I muted it, but I think I muted the send to you guys there for a minute.
You did.
But anyhow, that the way I read that bill, it's assumed that the place that you are in is a gun-free zone. So if you came into my house and you had a gun, they could arrest you, even though I like said, yeah, you can be here. But if I don't have a sign up, then the sign holds. Yeah, there's a lot of like really little crazy loopholes in that bill.
It's an unenforceable bill,
Yeah.
and it will be a bill that we don't comply with, right? If it does anything, though, it should activate a lot of the passive gun owners in Massachusetts, because I'm sure that more than half of our gun owners are shotgun guys, trap, skeet, duck hunting, bird hunting, and they're thinking, yeah, well, I don't need an AR-15. I don't care about handguns. And so they haven't felt impacted by our draconian laws as they are. But suddenly now, if they change out their choke tubes, it's a crime.
Yep. Yeah, that bill, I think Goal, Gun Owners Action League, was calling it like the make everyone a criminal bill or something like that. Yeah, it's horrible. And a lot of times gun owners will read that stuff and they'll say, well, that's stupid. That's not how it works. Like, no, they're very, very smart how they wrote that stuff.
Totally.
Very smart. And so basically it's unenforceable. But if they were to even catch wind of you, now they can throw down like a list of felonies that they can charge you with. Right. But in the meantime, someone commits a violent crime and the DA lets them go. And they let it.
Yeah. So something I guess I take a small amount of pride in is one of our state senators, not U.S. Senate, but Massachusetts state senators, lives in my town. And so we've known each other for over 20 years. And I kind of made a point of always having a cup of coffee with him about once or twice, a year. And I'm lucky he's a decent guy and he's open to it. And I was talking to him, about this some time ago. And I said, I got to ask you, I said, have you ever taken the basic firearm safety class? And he said, no. I said, but you vote on the legislation. And he said, you're right. And 2 weeks later, he and his wife took my class.
Awesome.
Okay. So, but I think we need to extend the invite. You can't just, call them names. You need to extend the invite. You need to get these guys in the class.
No, absolutely.
Explain what semi-automatic means. That's one of the highlights of my Saturday mornings is when people understand semi-automatic.
Yeah, I've been able to sit down and educate quite a few legislators, and so there are some that don't want to be educated, and they have their goal of being reelected and obtain more control. But yeah, there's a wealth of elected officials that just don't know any different because they haven't been exposed to firearms like we have, and they listen to the loudest voice. And unfortunately, gun owners typically they'll say, "I'm not talking to that guy." Well, no, you want to. Even if they are vehemently anti-gun, you still want to talk to them. Yeah. So you can maybe swing them around, educate them. But at the worst, you're learning what their talking points are. So if you talk to another one, you can kind of head them off at the pass.
Well, I thought Jared Yanis did a nice job at the expo, kind of giving us a call to action, and I felt empowered by it. In states like Massachusetts and New York, you're busy paying the mortgage, taking care of the family, and you enjoy, your few hours a week at the range. So you take on the attitude of, I just want to stay below the radar,
True.
and that's what happens. But
People
now,
love it when I say this. There were a lot of people at Nuremberg that just stayed under the radar and just paid the mortgage.
Uh-huh.
And that's how I felt that now the gun grabbing is so overt. I really heard Jared's call to action of no, it's time to be a little loud, a little more outspoken about it, and point out that, it's in the Bill of Rights, folks. And if they're willing to come after that one, well,
what else?
Which one do you care about? Because that's probably the one they're going to come after next. Right. And I think we need to start raising that awareness. And whether it's taking a relative, a friend, a congressman, a teacher, take people to the range. Have you ever taken someone to the range and they said, "Oh, I didn't enjoy that"? No, it's like ice cream. It's a great time.
Yep, totally.
Yeah,
awesome.
I think we all have to be ambassadors for the Second Amendment, ambassadors for our sport. We're not the problem, and we all need to practice and keep our fundamentals strong.
Well, and I think if people always have that mindset of, well, I'm not talking to him, he's anti-gun, and we don't approach those individuals to at least see if we can be there as a sounding board. I know I have got lots of politicians that are not very versed on guns here in New York, and some of them on the left side, most on the right, but some of them on the left that'll reach out to me and ask for clarification, ask for my input, my thoughts, and whatnot. And I try to give them an educated side. That's what we need to be to those ones that'll listen, and taking them to the range, being there and educating them, having your name in their mind so they know who you are, but doing it in a professional way. There's a time for the call to arms stuff, but I think we're not there yet, and I think we still have the Supreme Court on our side. So we got to push that
very much so.
Push the education as much as possible, so it doesn't culminate and come to that ammo box.
Hope it never does.
I agree.
Yeah.
Amen. And on that note, sir, how can people find out about you?
Pistolpractice.com.
Pick yours up. Pretty cool.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Clint.
Yeah, it was a pleasure having you on the show and talking with you and fellowshipping and learning more about you. I look forward to working with you more in the future.
The 2A community is comprised of some of the nicest people I've ever met. I've been working a long time, started in the Air Force 40 years ago. But everyone in the 2A community, I find, is willing to teach, help, lend a helping hand, support one another. Even at the range, we see it locally, but now I see it now that I'm at this wonderful phase in my life where I get to go to the expo. I'm hoping to go to SHOT Show, meet people like you that have been doing this for years and years. It's just great people. And I think that says something really nice about gun owners and about people with, I would dare say, a traditional set of American values.
Yeah, awesome. I would agree with that.
You're living those values and it shows.
Very well said.
Sweet. Well,
cool.
We'll see you next time then. It's a pleasure having you on
I want to come shoot in Syracuse, so maybe we can work that out.
You need to go up to his fun gun shoot.
Yes, you should.
I saw that.
November 18th. I'm going to try some of these with a 45-70 revolver.
That's interesting. I'm not a wheel gun guy.
That's my most out of all my guns. That is like one of my most favorite. Is my 45-70.
Shoots progressive drill.
Okay.
Chapter 19. That's a good one.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
There's a lot of sponsors to make this show possible, like Mantis.
Make sure you check them out and give them your business.
This episode is brought to you by Saber Red, pepper spray and safety products for all Americans. Next Level Training, makers of CERT training products. Mantis. Mantis X helps shooters suck less. Firearms Owners Against Crime Institute for Legal, Legislative, and Educational Action. Meet the Pressers is also supported by other shows, companies, and our Patreon members. Thank you.
Thanks for watching or listening to our show.
Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, click that little bell thingy so you know when the next episode's uploaded. Support us on Patreon. Come to one of our classes. Host us to come to you and do one of our classes at your location.
And until next time,
Adieu.
Thank you for watching Meet the Pressers.